Unprecedented times at Watertown City Hall, and Mayor Sarah Pierce is here to talk about the agenda that's on tonight and some other things as well. It is February 3rd. There is a meeting tonight with an agenda, and we'll talk about that first, and then we'll talk about the latest into the investigation happening involving some city council members and members of the public. So good to see you. Thank you for coming in and answering some questions here.
Thanks for having me.
First, for tonight, the flag policy is coming back up in front of Watertown City Council. And it seems to reach the concerns, or address the concerns that you had when this all went away last year, with having the flagpoles be considered freedom of speech. Mm-hmm. And the way that this policy now is written, it says that the flagpoles are not considered freedom of speech, and that the city has the right to allow whichever groups to do what they want to with the flagpoles, right? So whether it's going to be for the Irish Fest, which I know is moved, but you still could have a flag raising. Maybe it's for Pride. Maybe it's for the Italians. So what is your opinion of this new flag policy that's going to be voted on tonight?
So the flag policy, as you mentioned, it would kind of put the control in the hands of the entire city council, where, if I understand it correctly, we would be voting on each individual request to raise a flag in front of City Hall. And this is something that was proposed by Councilmember Kimball. I think it's important to recognize certain groups in the community. However, I still have reservations about picking and choosing which flags can be hoisted in front of City Hall. I think, it's been said by a number of people that the American flag represents us all. I think there's other ways that we can recognize those groups and what they stand for, but I just worry about putting the city in legal predicaments when we pick and choose which flags are allowed to be hoisted in front of City Hall.
But before, you were picking and choosing. This is now picking and choosing with stipulation or a policy in which you have it's not freedom of speech. A lot of times it would be the argument that the freedom of speech, and that would be, hey, we have our right to be able to do this. The city is taking control under this policy, it looks like, have control of their flags and have the ability to put up on those flagpoles any sort of message that the city feels is appropriate.
Right. I think that, yes, that's the intent of this. Before, the mayor was the one person who could say yes or no to certain flags. I don't know that mayors in the past had said no to certain flags. I think there may have been a couple instances where they didn't sign off on certain flags. That's where I worry that you will be putting the city in legal trouble if somebody were to challenge, well, hey, you said that this person could raise the flag, why can't I raise my flag? You never know what kind of request you're going to get.
What kind of group would get a no? It would be some kind of radical group that would be and she's getting over a cold, and you said that.
Like everybody, I think.
Everybody is battling that. Before, if it was a radical group, and again, I don't know if there's an example of this, or hate speech, it wouldn't have gotten a yes.
Well, it wouldn't have gotten a yes, but I also worry about not only radical groups requesting to raise flags, but just creating more controversy or divisiveness in the community. You might have, say, you raise a pro-life flag, and people are out there boycotting that. That's just another element of discord in the community that I think could be avoided if we find, or if we continue in other ways to recognize these different groups, whether it's through proclamations, flag raisings elsewhere, and just have the city property having the American flag, the POW flag, the city flag.
And the flag policy from Councilmember Kimball, he said he ran by city lawyers, the city lawyer, which wasn't done before. This is actually vetted through that and based on other flag policies.
I believe it's based on, and I don't want to speak for him, but I believe that he went to NYCOM and spoke with them about what other communities were doing as far as flag policies went.
Does that give you a little bit more of a foundation in terms of that this could be an okay policy if others are doing it?
I think it's certainly likely an okay above the board policy if it's something that's being done in other communities. That said, it still gives me pause whether or not we could get into legal trouble down the road, whether it would create additional divisiveness in the community. Those are my concerns at this point.
The divisiveness, let's talk about that with the proposed tariffs that could be on both sides of the border for the U.S., but also for Canada. economics aside, how do you feel this will affect relations between the two countries? I mean, you go to Kingston probably and
Sure.
maybe have dinner.
Yeah.
We just got booed as our American anthem played, national anthem played at a sporting event in Ottawa, and you want to have the friendliness with our friends from Ottawa, Kingston, Canada that come down to Watertown. So do you worry about that? Have you heard of anything?
It does concern me. I mean, aside from the economics of everything, I mean, I think, as everybody knows, we have a great deal of cross-border traffic that benefits us economically. You pull in the TJ Maxx parking lot on the weekend, and 70% of the cars in there are Canadian license plates. So we do rely heavily on the economic activity that's generated by Canadians coming to the U.S., as they rely on us coming over to Canada. But as you said, there's a relationship there that has cultivated over many years and a certain type of friendship, and it does concern me, and hopefully there will be some sort of positive outcome to this, and hopefully we can get through this without it damaging the relationship. As I was telling you before we started here, I received an email from somebody over the weekend, a resident of Ottawa, who essentially just said, sorry that this is happening. I hope that it doesn't damage the relationship that exists between our communities. He was saying that he considered Watertown a second home, spends a lot of time here, has relatives here, is a Canadian resident living in Ottawa. But I think that's a sentiment that hopefully a lot of people share, that this is something essentially that's bigger than all of us, and it doesn't have to harm the relationship that we have as individuals from our separate nations.
To the investigation at City Hall, anything, before I ask some questions, any sort of an update as to where that stands, or any sort of a timeline on when the community is supposed to learn more?
I do not know entirely, and I would leave that question up to the state police to answer.
This all started with a complaint that originated with former Mayor Jeff Smith. And that was into the alleged bribery complaint. The complaint was real, but whether it was a bribe or not, that's up for debate. And then it evolved into more of the golf course. Is that because state police started with what they were looking at first and they just found more, and it just kind of like evolved into a bigger investigation? Is that how you are told this is gone?
I would assume so. Again, I don't want to speak for them, but obviously they based on the complaint that was received, and they did mention at one point in time that they have an anonymous tip line, and they could have received other suggestions to look into certain aspects of things or certain issues. But it's my understanding that that's how it unfolded.
We know that it started, Jeff Smith has told us that he filed that original complaint. He was in the audience when this all went down at City Hall. It was a big surprise to a lot of people that this was going on, but he was in the audience. It's been said that you leaked it to him, and other people have been upset that they didn't find out about it till the meeting, but he knew about it. Did you leak that information to the mayor?
No, certainly not, and I can say that as the person who had filed a complaint, I'm aware that he had been regularly communicating with law enforcement regarding different aspects of things, or basically just cooperating with the investigation. And as for who knew about the investigation, who didn't, that's ultimately up to the state police and how they want to conduct their investigation and who they want to be made aware as they look to further the investigation.
When you started the meeting, you went back to your office and you asked council to go there. No executive session was called. As a person that's a journalist and media, there's of course questions with that. First, did you skip a step? Were you supposed to go into executive session?
So according to the legal opinion that we received from our attorney, no, this was not under the purview of executive session because it didn't involve city business. It's a state police criminal investigation.
So having all of the council in a back room talking about city business, where's the liberty not to have members of the public with that?
I think, well, ultimately it's up to the state police how they want to handle their investigation. And from my perspective, I think they likely did that to allow for some privacy for people who may have been involved in the investigation, so as to not do it publicly and, for lack of a better term, embarrass people.
Wouldn't, an opinion here, wouldn't it have been better and perhaps easier to defend if people were maybe taken back to the mayor's office one by one instead of having a quorum in that office where by open meeting laws, a member of the public or the media shouldn't be shunned and kept out of that room because no executive order was called. Any idea, and maybe you don't know, I'm just going to raise the point, any idea why it wasn't done one by one or even two people in the room? Because you don't have a quorum if that's the case. I mean, I'm going to open meeting laws. So any reason why they didn't do that and why they did put everybody in the room?
Sure. So I can't speak to their strategy, their investigative techniques, how and why they would want to do things a certain way. That entirely was up to them, how they felt it was best to conduct that questioning. I had no say in that, so I can't really speak to the decisions that were made to lead them to want to do it in that way. All I know is they felt that was the best way to further their investigation. And again, I'll just point out we had a opinion from our attorney that said that it wasn't in violation of open meetings law because it was a criminal investigation being done by the state police.
But a lot of times, and this is where I want to learn, but a lot of times when you go into executive session, it's to talk about potential litigation or investigations. I mean, there are times when you'll go into executive session and you'll bring the police chief in. This happened within the last couple of years. Bring the police chief in, and we ask, well, why are you bringing the police chief in? Because what he's going to talk about could hinder an investigation that's coming up. So if that's the case, of all that happening back in your office with a quorum of city council, and it was an investigation and they don't want the public to learn it because it could hinder the investigation, why not go into executive session?
Again,
I would think you'd be allowed to.
I would think that I think that you could, but from what I'm told from a legal standpoint, it wasn't an absolutely necessary step. That's a legal opinion that we received. That's the way that the state police felt that it was best to conduct the next step in their investigation.
The investigation back in that room led to, it was said, I think, state police mentioned to council that some of the evidence or things that they were looking at, 6,600 calls or communication between council members, certain council members, and a certain member of the public. Anything you can elaborate on that?
Just as it's been reported, you're accurate in saying that we were presented with essentially a call log that showed over 6,600 points of communication between certain council members and, as you said, a member of the public. And many times these communications, according to the investigators, were during meetings, before meetings, after meetings, during executive session.
So if they were happening,
Excuse me.
you said during meetings
Correct.
and during executive sessions?
Correct.
Does that concern you?
Yes, it is concerning
How
to
so?
me. Again, I don't want to get into too many details because it is an ongoing criminal investigation, but given the individual in question and who was communicating with that individual, it is concerning that that many forms of communication or that many instances of communication were occurring before, during, and after meetings. It is concerning.
Mm-hmm. In that room, did I've been told through others that the state police didn't have badges or show identification, didn't have a warrant, didn't have subpoenas.
Excuse me.
Is that all true?
They were not in uniform. They did have badges. There was a council member who asked to see a badge. The badge was shown. So they did have badges. These were actual state police.
Mm-hmm. And to have that number of state police come into the council chambers, into your office, it was a total of 7
Correct.
that were there. To have that number, and it was on a Tuesday when the weather was pretty lousy to get up here from Syracuse, and I'm guessing that they came from Syracuse because these troopers and investigators were based out of Syracuse and Albany?
Correct. Well, I'm not sure about Albany, but I know for sure Syracuse.
Okay. So people made the trip up in that
Correct.
snowstorm to be there. And the number of state police, it's concerning, it's alarming, I think, to the public to see that number involved in this. Do you think that's just routine?
I can't speak to that. I'm not sure this is the first investigation that I've had any role in cooperating with, so I can't speak to whether or not that's normal, but I would say that it probably speaks to the seriousness of the circumstances.
How is City Hall right now as you go and you conduct day-to-day business with whether it's employees or, because more people are being spoken to. It's not just in the investigation, as you pass the resolution, that the state police will be able to talk with current and past council members, current and past city employees, current and past city managers, current and past representation legally, lawyers. So that could be a lot of people. What's the mood like at City Hall? I mean, this is a first for that building. I
would certainly say that people are surprised that this is happening, and that I think that would be overall the word that I would use to describe. They're surprised that this is happening.
Morale? Is it affecting morale with employees?
I don't think it's affecting morale at all. At least from what I can see, I'm in City Hall at least a few times a week, and from as far as I can tell, morale is okay.
Mm-hmm. And you don't know when it's going to wrap up, you said, right?
I do not know.
And no kind of idea of like, oh, give us a few months or a year? I mean, could this just go on and on and on?
I mean, I would say, and again, this is all speculation on my part, being that it has been going on for such a long period of time, I would assume that it wouldn't go on for another year. But again, I can't really be the one to answer that question.
All right. Let me ask you about Snowtown USA, because that pretty much is wrapped up. Mm-hmm. Does the rink stay open at the Circle? Is that still going? It goes until,
I believe,
is that thawed?
Well, if it's not thawed yet, I think it's probably well on its way to thawing.
Yeah.
I haven't been up by there, but I did notice the signs are still up for the road closure, so I think if it's still there, people can skate on it, but I don't think it'll last that much longer.
Mm-hmm. So give me your synopsis on how it went. I mean, honestly, to have the weather that the city had, and I think this is the first almost full slate of events for Snowtown USA in the past several years.
Yes, great event, and I can't say enough about the people who are involved in organizing it, the Snowtown USA committee, as well as our city staff. They really put in a lot of time and effort to make it a nice event for the community, whether it was the skating at Park Circle, the Touch-A-Truck event, the sculptures, the fireworks. They really went all out, and so we're definitely thankful to them for all of their efforts, and we look forward to next year's, and I think next year's another year to hopefully build on what they've already established. And one of the things I did hear from a number of people was, be nice if there was a way to rent skates to bring up to the park, whether that's, a kiosk or something at the park, or if people could rent them and then bring them up to the park from the arena. So that's some feedback that we'll be looking into possibly incorporating next year.
Yeah, because you can rent them down at the arena.
Correct.
And you just don't have that ability up there. So just get a trailer or something.
Yeah, it'd be nice to have them up there. I did talk to people beforehand. They're like, oh, I went and bought skates for this, and
who attended?
That kind of thing.
Was it city residents? Did you meet people that were from out of town?
I would say, by and large, city residents, but also people from outside the city I know who came in. Whether that's to skate, or the big draw, I think, for people is the sculptures, which were up at Dry Hill this year, and the fireworks. And I think, there's definitely potential to grow this event and make it a much bigger event during the winter. Everybody's looking for things to do in the winter, so this is a good foundation that's been established that I think we could grow on.
The meeting tonight starts at 7 o'clock, Watertown City Chambers. It will be streamed as well. Do you anticipate it being a long meeting? This is the first one. I want to ask you one other question, but this is the first one that you've had since the investigation was announced. What are you anticipating here tonight?
Anything goes, as always. I expect that there probably will be quite a few people there, given the items that we have on the agenda, given what's going on with the investigation. I would anticipate that we'd have quite a few people coming to the meeting, and I'm sure it will be productive as always.
The last meeting after the investigation was announced, you wanted to reschedule everything that was on the agenda. You wanted to postpone it, and you'll talk about that stuff tonight. Why was that important to do, or why did you do it? It just seemed like, yes, the information that just came out was startling, but city business, looking at it was like it still could have gone on. And in fact, the meeting did go on. It didn't wrap up at that point when you announced that, because then there was a lot of conversation going back and forth with, I think it was new business and people wanted to answer what the questions were from the public. So the meeting did go on, and so why postpone
I mean, I
it?
thought it was important to give the people who were there to speak during privilege of the floor the opportunity to speak, and then for us to respond to them. I didn't want them to have made their way to City Hall and then had to, not been able to speak. That's important, but as far as not continuing on with the rest of the agenda, I think that decision was made just because this is an unprecedented set of circumstances here. We wanted to have the opportunity to at least talk to legal counsel about what was going on and how we should proceed from here before moving forward with an agenda and voting on different items. So that's why that decision was made.
The legal counsel that you have right now, and that the legal opinion that gave you the reason not to go into executive session and not to have anyone in that back room, what lawyer is that?
I would have to double check with the city manager.
Of who gave that opinion?
Correct.
Because the question would be, if you don't know who that is, the question would be, is that person involved in the ongoing investigation, and are they, without a conflict, giving that opinion?
Right, yeah.
Because they shouldn't be giving an opinion,
so
I would think.
my assumption, if I know the city manager well enough, and I think I do, would be that he would not be going to an individual who's involved in the investigation to get the opinion, but I'd have to double check with him.
Who would have been, yeah, because if they're going to be spoken to with state police, they shouldn't be giving
Correct.
that opinion of they should be staying out of it.
Correct.
They should recuse themselves out of it. Okay. I think I'm good. I'm just, you guys, the number of lawyers that you guys have, I'm just, or that you've gone through. It's just
I am eager to hopefully this, as unprecedented as it is, I'm hopeful that this will kind of bring things to a conclusion as far as all of the drama goes. I know that I speak for a lot of people when I say I'm eager to move past that and just get back to the regular business of City Hall. I can remember a time when there wasn't all of this controversy on City Council, and it was nice. So I think people are eager to get back to that. Hopefully, again, as unusual as this is a step toward moving beyond all of this.
You made me think of Colin Burns, who was here and announced his candidacy.
Yes.
Pete Monaco from DPW, retired from DPW, is expected to announce as well. I don't want your opinion on them, but do you expect, what are you hearing for, is it going to be a robust race for City Council this year?
It's tough to say. Those couple names and maybe a couple others are the only ones that I've really heard, but honestly, I think a lot of people in the general public look at what's going on and they say, why would I want to get involved in that? But ultimately, we need good people to get involved and, again, to move beyond this.
And the political season starts this month, February,
Yes.
because you have to get petitions out
Yeah,
because
tough
everything
to
is kind of
believe.
moved up. So, all right, Mayor, good to see you. Thanks
Good to
for
see you
answering
too.
the questions.
Thank you.